Hello guys, I'm back today with another watercolor illustration tutorial. Now this is an illustration that I spent quite a bit of time working on and I'm really excited to share it with all of you. I started off with a little thumbnail sketch in my bullet journal and then moved right into drawing pencil straight onto the watercolor paper. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put down a layer of washes, and I put down a layer of washes on the ground, and then while that is drying I test out a few little details on the tiger just to see, make sure that I'm on the right track. Now it's filling in details. Now this illustration is part of a series, and the thing that I use to tie all the series together is these little circles. And while they look really cool, they take a lot of time. So I'm going to go ahead and skip through that relatively quickly just so that it's not boring for you guys. In this illustration, I am using both watercolors and ink. So the brown is actually ink. Now right now I'm using masking fluid to mask off the areas that I want to stay white. If you are not familiar with masking fluid, it is a really amazing tool that is very helpful. You can go ahead and lay it down, and then once it dries, you can lay washes over it and it will keep the paper underneath white. And then when you are done with the washes, you can remove the masking fluid and the paper will still be intact. So you can then paint those areas. I'm laying down a burnt sienna wash, and this is partially watercolor, partial ink as well. So some of the darker areas are actually a Winsor Newton ink. Now I'm gonna go ahead and work on the sky. I lay down a layer of water first, then the color, and then the salt technique, where I'm adding just some regular sea salt and letting that dry so that I can get the salt effect of the sky. The tiger is the next portion I'm going to work on. I went ahead and laid down just a basic layer of yellow just to get that covered and wait for that to dry. While that's drying, I'm going to work on the little sunny, cloudy portion of the sky. And again, I'm doing these circles, so they tie the entire piece together as well as with the series. Now the orange that I'm using is another ink color. It is also a Winsor Newton ink. And I wanted to use ink for this piece because I wanted to be able to continue to layer up the watercolor with certain features remaining intact. And so the ink is actually a waterproof ink, so I can lay the layers of watercolor over the ink and it will not run. So for example, right now I'm working on the tiger stripes and I'm using ink. And then if I want to go back in later and layer more washes of color over the tiger, it won't do anything to the stripes. I like this feature because I can go in and add details, and then if I decide to add more color or shadow to the animal after the fact, then all the details will still remain. I won't have to repaint them. Now I'm moving into the different layers of bamboo. There's going to be 3 different levels of bamboo, so the far ones I'm not going to put too much detail into. I keep them kind of washy so that they fade away into the background. And now I'm doing the details of the rock. I'm using, again, both ink and watercolor for these portions. So the darker shade is actually an ink, and then the lighter shade is watercolor. I'm adding in a few more circles just to tie the middle ground together. Now I'm going to layer the first wash for the second tiger. And while that dries, I'm going to try to build up the background a little bit more. I was originally going to keep it a very light background, but as I got working, I just didn't like the way it looked. I wanted to make it a little bit darker, so I kept adding washes to it. And that's where the masking fluid becomes really helpful. So I'm adding some more circles. I got bored of doing that, so like usual, I bounced around a lot during doing this painting. I felt like the circles were overpowering the piece a little bit too much in the front, so you'll see I added in some layers of extra color in the front to kind of tone down and also add an extra layer of overlapping, so that feels closer than the stuff that's further away. Now I am removing the masking fluid, and I'm going to start doing the closer bamboo, and as you'll see underneath the masking fluid, it did stay all white. So now it's a perfectly clean surface for me to work on the bamboo and build it up. And I'm working on the bamboo that's furthest away now. Again, keeping it very washy so that it fades into the background. And now the layer in the middle, or closer to the front, I should say, which is going to have a lot more detail. And this is where I have a little bit of fun. Like usual, I like to add little patterns, dots, lines, and little Zentangle work into my images. So the bamboo is really fun for me to do that. This is also a portion of time. This is also an area that took quite a lot of time to do, but it is my favorite part, which if you watch some of my previous videos, you'll know that I really enjoy working on the details. That is my favorite part of doing a painting. And this painting did come together very quickly, and I know in my previous watercolor video I talked about going through the ugly phase where you don't really like the painting or which direction it's going in. For this particular painting, I actually didn't feel like I had an ugly phase. I liked the entire process. It came together very quickly. I liked the color palette that I chose. I felt that the composition was fairly strong, and I was able to lay down my washes and get right into the details pretty quickly. And by pretty quickly, I do mean within 10 hours. But it was really an enjoyable piece to work on, and I'm building up the layers here as I add in the leaves and the different colors. I added a little bit more of a red-brown to the rocks so that they weren't all monotone. And I'm filling in the little spaces. I intended the leaves to cover more space when I laid down the masking fluid, and then once I put the leaves in, I realized that I needed to fill in that space because I didn't want to put as many leaves as I had previously planned. Now I'm adding little details to the tiger's face, and removing the masking fluid on the other side, and then repeating the same designs and patterns that I did on the previous bamboo on the left side. I'm also tying in the bottom, and I'm going to add another layer of brown just like I did on the left hand side to kind of make that recede a little bit more. At this point I realized the front of the piece was too light, especially with the brown that was added, so I'm using the masking fluid to mask over the color that I don't want to get destroyed by these next washes. I'm going to wash in some really dark browns and a dark muted muddy green, and so I masked over the watercolor that was previously laid down. Now that did allow me to make some really awesome really awesome washes to add on top of it and make the background a little bit better. Although if you do lay the masking fluid on top of something that you previously added watercolor to, sometimes it can remove the color, and you will see when I remove this, it did remove the color on some of the green leaves in the front, and it also removes some of the color on the tiger. But it turned out okay in the end, and I was able to just go over those again with another layer of color, and they were just fine. It didn't destroy the paper or ruin the painting in any way. It just left a little bit more work for me to do, but it ended up turning out alright. And the masking fluid was really helpful because without it, even though I did have to backtrack a little bit, without it, it would have been much more difficult to lay the layers in the background as easily as I did. So I'm just finishing off different areas, and now it's just left up to the very little details. Zooming in and looking at where I want to place more detail, more tiny little dots and lines to make the piece a little bit more interesting. And I also end up turning the painting upside down a few times. I try to look at it in different ways to notice problem areas. and I fill in any little spots that I think are problem areas, and then I am finished. So I take off the masking fluid and I remove the watercolor paper from the watercolor block, sign my name at the bottom with a white gel pen, and then I will go in and add just a few little details in white with the white gel pen that helps make it pop, which for this painting is the eyes, and then I add in some whiskers as well to the tiger faces. So that is it for this painting. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment below. If you have any questions about my process or anything in general to say, please do comment. And also, don't forget to subscribe. I'm almost at 400 subscribers, and subscribing helps me to keep making more videos. As always, thanks for watching, and remember to live, love, and travel on. I'll see you next week. Bye!